So here I am, minding my own business, and I get a weather alert that it's going to be like 0 degrees for my good friend Duey Freeman living on a mountain in Colorado. Dude, I hope you're not freezing to death.
Well, I'm hanging in here. It right now is 11 below zero. And I just came down from feeding my horses and um, making sure that they're okay. They are. They've been blanketed. I've blanketed them last night. And um, what's interesting is I usually feed them in like these net bags. They're called hay bags. So they eat a little slower, but I think their lips and the bags were too cold for them to eat.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I put hay out on the, actually, we got about an inch and a half of snow last night too. So they're eating that and they're doing much better. So,
So while it's cold for you, last night, Kimberly and I decided to go out for a bite. I had on 4 layers and a thing around my head and my hat because I knew we were going to sit outside to eat around the corner at local. It was Dewey, it was 53 degrees. Come on, it was cold outside. We had them bring us UGG blankets to wrap around us, and we had 2 heaters on.
well, I will harass you about that a little bit. And
Just the bouginess of using UGG blankets or sitting outside to eat, or
53 degrees to me is t-shirt weather. So it's actually that's interesting. The other night, I don't know if you made it on that call the other night that was sort of the State of the Nation that Traver led.
no, I missed that.
Yeah, actually, it was a really good call.
Oh,
Good,
good.
really good call. Bunch of new men on, and he was talking about different levels of strength. There are different kinds of strength.
Mm.
Like physical, emotional, spiritual. Um, he had a bunch that were really good, and what with you speaking, and right now, I think Traver's in Kauai.
Yeah, he is. He flew home yesterday.
Yeah. Oh, it was yesterday that he
Yeah.
came. Oh, he's not going to be happy landing. Um,
Yeah,
the
I was ribbing him a bit. I said, okay, so you're out there literally swimming with the turtles, sitting outside, just enjoying Kauai is, as you know, our favorite island. And he went to our favorite breakfast spot, the Kalaeho Cafe,
Mhm.
and then he had to come home to -11.
Yeah, it's probably not -11 there. It's probably only -5, but it's like anyway. We just part of the strength piece that I was thinking about is we tend to acclimatize
Yeah,
to
exactly.
where we're at. Like if it's really hot, I really struggle.
Mm,
Uh,
mm.
and I'm up at 11 below to feed and do all the stuff. There's times where, for periods of time, I can't do that with gloves on. And so
Uh,
I have to get used to my hands being relatively cold. And
well,
so,
the guy with the cold fingers is Dewey Freeman. I am Mark Sylvester. We're the Elder Council. Dewey, I've been thinking about, um, yeah, you're 9.5. That's right. I've been thinking about our work lives,
Mhm.
our what we do at work, and I'm not retired because I seem to be busy all the time, but I haven't worked for someone else since I was 30. So I pretty much work for myself. I do the things that need to be done. And my whole life, I kind of get into something that where my passion leads me to do a thing, and then I learn how to do the thing. It's like I make a choice and then I make it the right one. Um, I didn't know it. What do I know from computer programming? And we start a visual effects house that goes on to win Academy Awards and all that kind of stuff. So I was like learning all the time. And my partner, I've said this before, that my partner said, listen, Mark, 30% of your job's going to be reading and learning and staying on top of all this stuff because we were on the bleeding edge of things. So I was having to learn. I'd never worked in an office, et cetera, et cetera. Same thing with the kitchen and always learning. And I feel like I'm in one of those spurts right now.
Really?
Yeah, because I love technology. I've always loved technology. I've been kind of way forward on that, and I've been way forward on the whole AI piece. Kind of started, we know it started years and years ago, but as it has become more accessible to mortals, if you will, you don't have to work at a big lab or a big country. You have access to these things. I've been spending most of my free time experimenting and trying and doing things. For instance, related to my cooking, how do I use the robots to optimize the efficiency of my cooking schedules and shopping lists and planning and all that stuff? I shaved 4 hours off my shifts this week by doing that. Yeah. Now it cost me an hour to do the work, but it won't cost me an hour this next week because I know what I need to do and I know how to work and fine tune. Which leads me to this notion of having a plan for career development. And are you backing into what you do? Are you doing what generationally you were doing? Your grandfather was something, your dad was something, and now you're that thing, or you're the rebel and you're not that thing, or you went to school to do a thing, but now you're not doing that thing. I'm whatever it is that you are doing, do you have a plan? And do you have your own development plan to move yourself up and transition up the ladder, whatever that ladder is for you, whatever that is? Do you have a plan, or are you just letting that happen to you? It wasn't a really well phrased question, but that's my thesis is, or my
Hypothesis?
thank you, is that most don't have a plan. And I thought we'd start there.
So with that, I have a question for you. Did you have a plan for yourself?
Nope.
Yeah, and actually, neither did I.
Yep.
Well, actually, I did have a plan.
And you changed it, right? Because of an
And I
incident.
changed it when I was 20 years old. My
Yeah.
plan was to be a engineer and physicist, and then my plan was to become a aeronautical engineer. And that totally got changed. And I often say to people, if I knew 50 plus years ago that I would be living on the side of a mountain doing what I'm doing, talking to wonderful people like yourself, being with the woman I'm with, if someone would have told me that 50 years ago or even 30 years ago, I would have told them they were absolutely nuts.
So,
Okay.
so that being said, I think we're talking about being opportunistic. There's something happens and an opportunity comes our way, and it's like, oh man, that looks really good, or we seize an opportunity, right? So in my case, it was like I was hungry, I needed to make money, I got a job in a restaurant. That was just simple, Maslow there, right? Just do that.
I need,
But the I need money, I need food, I need money. The What I'm suggesting, if you're like if that is how your life evolved, do you take stock at some point and say, I really like this thing, or it's just a job? Fine. Does this feel like the beginning of a career? Okay. Gosh, I ended up here. Huh. now, and I'm not going to stop this to go to school to learn how to do this thing. So what do you do? How do you make a plan and be very intentional about getting better at this thing you find yourself in? There you go, Doc. That's it.
Well, say that a little bit again. To how do you make a plan when you find yourself in something?
So once I found I really wanted to do computer, I'm an entrepreneur. At the heart of all this stuff, I'm an entrepreneur. That's just in my DNA. So when I started Wavefront, it was like I wanted to make pictures. I wanted to make pictures on computers. That's what I wanted to do. And there was no way to, I couldn't go buy a computer to do that. There was no software to do that. There was none of the things that I needed for me to do that did not exist. So I went searching for how can I get the infrastructure around me to do that. And it was originally, let's start a production company where we produce commercials for television. Let's do that. Okay, well, what are we gonna need? We're gonna need software. Let's go find that guy. We're gonna need money. Let's go find that. We're gonna need equipment. Let's go find those things. I'm very good at that kind of stuff with the goal of me being able to sit down and do animation, not anything that happened as a result. It was like I just wanted to do animation. As a result, I learned all about computer programming and software development. I learned about team building. I learned about like how do you raise money? I learned about how do you pitch? I learned about how do you deal with customers? Thankfully, I had a hospitality background, so I wasn't coming in cold. But I soon found that I needed to seek out and pay attention to people who were further along the path and pick their brains and learn from them because there wasn't any formal education. But that was very conscious on my part that I needed to, a portion of my time was in personal development as it related to career. So we talk about personal development in getting better at doing things. So, you know, we work on ourselves, we work on our anger management, we work on stuff that's personal development. I look at personal development in terms of what am I doing to improve my career ability.
Is there a underlying motivation that drives you? Because as you're talking, I'm like scrolling through my process,
Mhm.
and the underlying motivation for me that has driven me is creativity.
Mhm.
Like, and what's an interesting piece for me, if someone were to say, Dewey, did you have a plan to get where you're at? I would say, no, you've got to be kidding me. If I mean, even as if I look back, if I were going to reverse engineer it, I don't know if I could have put a plan together reverse engineering it. But what I did follow on a regular basis was a gut level instinct of some sort and an incredible desire to be creative. Like there have been many things, and it's not so different than what when you first mentioned this. I thought, oh well, we might be really different with this. But as you spoke, I'm not so sure we're that different with this because it was like I would see something and go, not a bad idea, but boy, the way that this is being done is it's frankly almost a waste of time.
Hmm.
So, um, and not that I've seen things and gone, oh, they're not right. It's more like I've seen things and gone, oh, it's not useful.
I see him and I think that's not very efficient.
Very, yes. And as an example, like the whole developmental thing that I put together, and I actually taught development on a master's level at university
Yeah, exactly.
for years, like decades, actually, 34 to 35 years total. And like Erickson and Freud and Maslow and all of those guys, they put together some stuff, but in all honesty, it's not the stuff they put together, I think is there's validity to it, but it's not practical.
Mm,
Nobody's going to come into therapy. Nobody's going to come into a relationship and go, well, I'm at this step in Maslow's hierarchy. It's like nobody does that.
right.
Or when if you get in a conflict with your partner or wife or friend, nobody says, oh, well, I'm in the middle of, you know, dealing with shame and doubt, or nobody does that. Or it's like, well, I think I'm in the trust versus mistrust stage, or I'm in the middle of autonomy versus shame and doubt. Nobody does that. And so because they're not useful, people don't use them.
Mm,
There's no reference point for them to go to. And so creativity to me, and I think this actually might fit for a piece that you've done, is and before I say this, I am such a white belt with technology that I might be blowing smoke here. But
you've yet to get your black belt, tenderfoot.
what did you just say? Something?
I mixed Boy Scouts and martial arts because I remember we weren't given a white. You didn't start as a white belt. You actually had to test to get the white belt.
Got it. Well, I haven't even tested on the technology phase yet. So
I got you, buddy. You're good.
yeah, you have had my back more than once. Um, but what I've seen you do is take stuff that's incredibly complicated and make it useful.
Hmm.
I mean, that's what I don't know that enough about all the details of what you did, but when you were talking to me about Lord of the Rings and all of the other stuff that you've done, and it's like what you do is you've taken stuff that is out there somehow, somewhere, but you've made it useful. And if it wasn't useful, you created what needed to be created so whatever was happening was useful. I mean, that's what I've seen you do.
Yeah,
And I
that's
think
fair. That's
that's what I've done too, just in a different realm.
which speaks to the word creativity is a foundational word. Like if I was looking at a word cloud of this, right? We know a word, for those people don't know, a
Mhm.
word cloud is just a jumble of words, but the size of them implies their import into the overall thing. And let's take that concept and just turn it just a tiny bit to say foundational. What are the words at the bottom that you then build on till you get all the way up? And I think creativity is there. I think there's one just before.
And
It's
what
curiosity. Because creativity is I think it's a verb. Like I create a solution. I create a more optimized solution. I create usefulness. I create things. But it's because I'm curious about the thing.
mm, what creates your curiosity?
That's that's such a great question because I don't know if that's nature or nurture. I don't know that I grew up in a particularly creative home. I mean, I was pretty much a latchkey kid, so feel like I was raised by wolves, by myself. Uh, So that was something I had. I've always been curious, just been curious. So I don't, that's a question for maybe a little research to look into that. Is curiosity born, or is it bred? Like, if you had a dad, I could see a picture of curiosity in action. I love this term we came up with at Wavefront. We called it observable behaviors. So it was, you could say you were curious. You're curious. We're a curious company. You could see that, the curiosity company. We only hire curious people. Fuck that. What does that look like? What does it look like? Like, don't spout these things. What's an observable behavior of creativity? So the picture that came into my mind would be my dad walking us on a hike and pointing out things and having us go explore and look and see what you can see. This is fun. Like, that's what curiosity looks like to me. That's just an example. So I
Yeah.
don't know if it's you born with it, and then you have loving parents or loving teachers or someone who challenges you to explore. Hey, go look more. What else do you think you could find? Oh, I don't know. Let me go look. Let me go look. I think that feels like a really early childhood thing that gets nurtured and accelerated and recognized. And gosh, and then you start, like, curiosity is good. And possibly my mom buying me the 1925 edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica at a yard sale for $5, and I read the whole thing. But that was like, oh my gosh, look at all this stuff I can learn. Is that my mom putting an opportunity there in front of me, and then me, then doing that? I don't know the answer, but I think it's curiosity before creativity now that we explore this a little bit.
So one of the things that hits me, for people to be curious, they have to be willing to take a risk.
Um, okay, tell me more about that. I mean, I could see that, but I don't feel like any of the things it didn't it's not exploring, which is another verb around curiosity, doesn't feel, I don't feel like I'm taking a risk. I'm it's not an advent Curiosity is not an adventure to me. Adventure implies some risk.
Well, I would respectfully disagree.
Oh, okay, there we go. Mark this 42 minutes in. Okay.
Well, here's what I mean. What I mean is, if I'm curious about something, there's a very high likelihood that in my exploration, I'm not going to find it at first.
Sure.
Or in my exploration, I may find something else. Or
Of
in my
course.
exploration, I may be shut down. Or in my exploration, I may be, when I go up to a tree on a hike with my dad, although that never happened in my life, but and
It,
I
it,
look,
bar- it barely happened in mine, but it did once.
is I might get poison ivy. I mean, I have worked with people and I have said, even in relationship, are you curious about your partner?
Mm-hmm.
Are you curious about, I mean, one of the nice things between you and I is both of us are curious about the other person.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and for the audience, I can't tell you how many discussions Mark and I have had where, offline, where it's like we start with X and 20 minutes later we go, how did we end up here?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but my take is, if I really want, for instance, to be curious about what Kimberly feels about a certain thing, I have to be willing to take the risk that I might not get the answer that I want.
But that's be careful what you ask for. You might get it.
Right. Or I might go, hey, babe, I've put together this great thing. And she goes, I'm not interested. And
Those who didn't see, Mark raised his hand. In agreement. Yeah, that's
and
so you're right. If our base personality tends to be pessimistic, then that's going to color your curiosity. If your base personality is optimistic, then you're going to look forward to that. And that wouldn't it, and yeah, I did a thing and she didn't like it, or it wasn't that okay. My whole self-worth is not buried in her liking or not liking the thing I did. I learned it used to be, it used to be, but then I learned like she likes different stuff. And I don't have to have my whole thing buried in her thing. Does that make sense?
absolutely.
Yeah, but that's learned behavior.
Well, it's learned behavior because you took a risk in the first place.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Otherwise, and interestingly enough, whether it's either of our Kimberleys, were willing to be honest enough to say,
Yes.
yeah, that doesn't
Yeah.
turn me on. That's not what my interest is. That's
Yeah.
not, you know, so there's an underlying possibility that, if I am furious about something, that it's not going to work. And I agree with you. If we sort of go through life optimistically, and this is because I know you pretty well at this point, is because you're optimistic, a lot of things don't feel like a risk
Right.
when there really is some risk in it.
And there might be, yeah, 100%.
And a big part of that has to do with, like, risk is okay with you. Failing is okay because you're not taking it personally. It's like, oh, well, that didn't work. What that means to me
Right. Right.
is
Exactly.
that's a piece of information. If I'm trying
Exactly.
to, like, just when I was up feeding the horses, it's so cold here that they were not eating out of their feed bags, and it was like I'm going, what is happening? And it was like, oh, I mean, it's 11 below. My fingers were getting pretty cold. I'm guessing their lips are pretty cold. It looked like when they went up to the feed bags, like it actually hurt
Mm.
to eat their net bags with hay in them. They're like, and so it was like, oh, what can I do to change that? So I just put hay out on we got snow, and I put it out on the ground, and all three of the horses started eating immediately. Um, but it's what can what can we do things, be curious, be creative, and have it not work, and use that as a piece of information versus as a failure, because that's how I see you do it.
And I am fortunate to have found Kimberly, who, and I think together we live a life of experimenting.
Yes.
We
Yes.
and we will and we, if anyone around us knows that, and we encourage that behavior in other people. So when we're working with someone, we'll say, I know this doesn't feel comfortable to you because it's new to you, but look at it as, and so we de-risk it by saying, look at this as an experiment. It's just an experiment.
Yes.
And if it's just an experiment, doesn't work, didn't work. It was just an experiment, didn't like it. Okay, no harm, no foul, great. And so what we see is, and now I'm thinking about this, it's de-risking the activity by positioning the activity as an experiment so that you can go, well, experiment didn't work. All right, tried something, change one of the variables, change another, experiment again. Eventually, how many light bulbs did Edison make before he got the one that worked? 10,000.
Did he really?
And that's what he says. I'm just, someone's going to fact check me. So it's either 1,000 or 10,000, but it had zeros by it. And he's known as this famous guy. He says, yeah, because I experimented until we got it right.
Yes.
People remember the last thing you got right, not that whole journey up to getting right, which gets back to this idea of career development. So if you find you're not as effective communicating in meetings or leading people, or people quit on you, or whatever it is, are you doing something to analyze that, look at that, and then go out of your way to get better at that, whatever that means? Have a mentor that you can talk to, take a class. I think LinkedIn Learning is spectacular for very targeted skill development that's in bite-sized little 9-minute chunks and very inexpensive. And you can go, hey, how do I get better at delegating? How do I get better at negotiating? How do I get better at developing my people? How do I get better at these things? Because I want to be better at that stuff. And if I look at it as an experiment, hey, I've never taken an online class. I don't know if I'd be good at it. I don't know. It's an experiment. Try it. 9 minutes a day for a week. Oh, huh. Well, I learned 3 things. Wow. Huh. That's awesome. That to me, but again, I'm probably an edge case, but hopefully it's motivation enough to the person who's listening to think, oh, am I doing something? Okay, here's another way. There's this idea called continuous and never ending improvement, and it's a way of life. Can I be 1% better today than I was yesterday? Do we believe that? Sure, I will live in a world where I could be 1% better. What is the thing that you're going to work on today? Tiny, it's 1%. It's this big. But intentionally think, what's the one thing I'm going to work on today? A little better at it. I'm going to go read something about it. I'm going to search out something. That one thing. And at the end of the day, I can go, oh, nailed that. That's very intentional. That's very deliberate. Might require journaling in the morning and journaling at night, or just wake up in the morning and say, wait, what's that thing today? And mine is like today, I'm thinking about it because I'm so involved in teaching myself how to get more out of my relationship with the AI on specific things that I'm working on, that when I get interrupted to do like real life interrupts and someone walks in and says, hey, we're late, we got to go. What I'm going to work on is just to just take a real quick breath. Yep. Park my stuff and not feel like I've been interrupted. I'm doing thing I want to do. And you've just interrupted that. No. So that's what I'm going to do today. But that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Do you live a life where you're trying to 1% better? So if you do the math, because you're a physicist, how many days until you're 100% better?
100.
How many actual days is that from now?
Oh, that's a good question.
Middle of April.
9? It's 99 days from now. So, question with that. In that process, what do you do to allow yourself to rest and to to cherish what you've accomplished.
I think that's as big a part as any of it. That's the gratitude part. I mean, gratitude towards yourself. I mean, in this case, um, I can say, hey, I give myself an attaboy, number one. Hey, that was awesome. You like just to have my watcher on, right? So to say, hey, you did what you said you were going to do. You just logged out, you got up, you walked, and you had a smile on your face, and you were genuinely being present and ready for the next thing and not bemoaning having stopped that thing because that's what I want to work on. And hey, good job. And you get a treat. we literally, we're so crazy in this house, dude. So we literally will say, what are we going to do tonight to give us a treat for all the hard work we're going to do during the day?
Mm.
And the treat could be, oh, we're going to play a game. We're just going to sit around and just literally do nothing. We're going to, what's our treat? We're going to go to the movie, or like we do that at our age, and it has a extremely positive outcome because it's kind of a fun thing. It's like we are very busy. We have lots and lots of stuff, and sometimes it'll feel like work. It is work, right? And it's I can't get my breath. Didn't have any chance to eat. It was back to back appointments. You know exactly what I'm talking about. But there's a little part of the brain's going, yeah, and we're going to get to go to the movie. There's that treat. There's that recognition. Hey, we did that. So we're closed loop on all the stuff. And in fact, I have found, because we work at home, I will do things like I'll say, you know what? I'm going to just take 20 minutes and I'm going to lay down on the bed. I'm going to read for a little bit, like right in the middle of my cooking shift. I'm going to give my body a break. I'm going to give my brain a break. I'm going to read a little bit, or I'm just going to lay and be still. And I love that part. So we also call that white space. It's the space in between your calendar. Like you look at your calendar, it's appointment. Oh, we call that white space, and we enjoy that. Did that answer the question? It was a long damn answer.
Yes, it did. One of the pieces that is, I really like the idea of the 1% better every day, or something better, or every day. There's another aspect to that for me, is that we need time to let things soak.
Yes.
And I'll tell you what I mean by that. When I'm working on a new skill with my horse, two things happen. One is, what I'm doing is rewarding the try, not rewarding the behavior.
Correct.
So that's one piece. But the other piece is that I actually, when I get a try towards something that's really a solid try, what I will do is I'll let that soak in for sometimes 4 or 5 minutes, sometimes a half an hour, sometimes a day. Because that's part of how we learn, is to let things soak. And it's not so different, like the name of my year is Reclaiming My Body. And I put together a whole plan on doing that. And I've already started it. I mean, to the point to where, my workouts and my food and my exercise and getting coaching around that, nutrition, I mean, all kinds of stuff. And what is so important is not working out really hard every day.
Mm-hmm.
It's like having the goal of working out really hard 4 days a week or 5 days a week or 4 days a week, and then something lighter for the other 3.
Well, it's because the goal isn't working out. The goal is reclaiming your body.
Yes. So if my thing was, I have to, and this is purely an example. Let's say I'm working with a 20-pound kettlebell. God, talk much. Is I'm not trying the next day to do 20 pounds plus 1%. I'm not trying to do, that's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is push myself enough to where I do improve, but then I'm trying to give myself time to recover.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe if we were putting in the terms of the 1% piece, it's like I could get 1% better every day at letting myself recover.
Right.
That would be a
Right.
way to put it.
Right. Right.
So,
Right.
and
Right.
I'm just thinking out loud here. So it's like, I think what I'm saying is what I want is for people, if you're not in, if I do, and again, these are pure numbers, if I do 20 squats with a 20-pound kettlebell, and then the next day I do 21, and then the next day 22, and that's not what my goal is. So be careful of that. My goal is, now, am I working my way up and doing more squats? Am I doing slower squats? I mean, there's all different kinds of ways to add the 1%. And I think that's probably what have been trying to get to. It's like, take a look at all the different ways you can add 1%. Like one day it might be adding an extra 5 squats, but then the next day is adding 1% of recovery and soaking time in a way that is really positive for yourself.
Exactly.
So
My year is do it now.
oh, mhm.
And I made a card. I went on to Etsy. I had 2 of them made. One that sits right in front of me, so I just see it all the time. And then one's in my wallet, so I see it every time I open the wallet. And I was just thinking of yesterday. What was the 1%? So it's Friday. We'd gone out. We'd already talked about me bundling up to go sit outside in 50-degree weather. And when we're there, it was like, okay, now we've nourished ourselves. Now we're going to go back and do a night shift, right? So it's like 8 o'clock. We'll do a night shift till 11 and go to bed. And normally we just, okay, that's the next thing to do. Let's go do that thing. And I got up and I looked in the restaurant and I saw a couple of friends. And I was like, oh, normally I could choose to just, go. Hey, we got to go. We got to get back to work. Walk over and be very present in loving and hugging and holding and new yearing them and haven't seen them and catching up and just not feeling rushed. Like, hey, we have to go do this other thing. And as we turn to leave, who do we see come running up and almost jump into a hug with us? Marla, our good friend Marla. And she just jumps and hugs and, oh my gosh, what are you guys doing here? And it was like, we're on the way to the car. I didn't have to say, oh yeah, hey, good to see you. And we probably spent 10, 15 minutes chatting and being very present, because part of the challenge of working at home is you don't have the human contact in real life, right, with people. And so that was part of the let's enjoy community we talked about, which we talked about last week, that our need to feel connected and loved and hug just one beat longer, hold just one little bit later.
Totally.
My friend, I love our conversations. They continue to just continue. They continue to continue. That was deep, Mark. Fuck.
That was very, they continue to continue. That's a really good place to stop. That's perfect.